Chapter 16. Abram's wife Sarai had borne him no children. She had, however, an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. Sarai said to Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from bearing children. Have intercourse then with my maid. Perhaps I shall have sons through her." Abram heeded Sarai's request. Thus, after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, his wife Sarai took her maid, Hagar the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his concubine. He had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. When she became aware of her pregnancy, she looked on her mistress with disdain. So Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for this outrage against me. I myself gave my maid to your embrace, but ever since she became aware of her pregnancy, she has been looking on me with disdain. May the Lord decide between you and me." Abram told Sarai, "Your maid is in your power. Do to her whatever you please." Sarai then abused her so much that Hagar ran away from her. The Lord's messenger found her by a spring in the wilderness, the spring on the road to Shur, and he asked, "Hagar, maid of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She answered, "I am running away from my mistress, Sarai." But the Lord's messenger told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her abusive treatment. I will make your descendants so numerous," added the Lord's messenger, "that they will be too many to count. Besides," the Lord's messenger said to her, "you are now pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard you. God has answered you. He shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. In opposition to all his kin shall he encamp." To the Lord who spoke to her she gave a name, saying, "You are the God of vision." She meant, "Have I really seen God and remained alive after my vision?" That is why the well is called Beer Lahai Roi. It is between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram named the son whom Hagar bore him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am God the Almighty. Walk in my presence and be blameless. Between you and me, I will establish my covenant, and I will multiply you exceedingly." When Abram prostrated himself, God continued to speak to him. "My covenant with you is this. You are to become the father of a host of nations. No longer shall you be called Abram. Your name shall be Abraham, for I am making you the father of a host of nations. I will render you exceedingly fertile. I will make nations of you. Kings shall stem from you. I will maintain my covenant with you and your descendants after you throughout the ages as an everlasting pact, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land in which you are now staying, the whole land of Canaan, as a permanent possession, and I will be their God." God also said to Abraham, "On your part, you and your descendants after you must keep my covenant throughout the ages. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you that you must keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. Circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and that shall be the mark of the covenant between you and me. Throughout the ages, every male among you, when he is 8 days old, shall be circumcised, including houseborn slaves, and those acquired with money from any foreigner who is not of your blood. Yes, both the houseborn slaves and those acquired with money must be circumcised. Thus my covenant shall be in your flesh as an everlasting pact. If a male is uncircumcised, that is, if the flesh of his foreskin has not been cut away, such a one shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." God further said to Abraham,
As for your wife Sarai, do not call her Sarai. Her name shall be Sarah. I will bless her, and I will give you a son by her. Him also will I bless. He shall give rise to nations, and rulers of people shall issue from him.
Abraham prostrated himself and laughed, as he said to himself, Can a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Or can Sarah give birth at 90? Then Abraham said to God, Let but Ishmael live on by your favor. God replied,
Nevertheless, your wife Sarah is to bear you a son, and you shall call him Isaac. I will maintain my covenant with him as an everlasting pact, to be his God and the God of his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I am heeding you. I hereby bless him. I will make him fertile and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall become the father of 12 chieftains, and I will make of him a great nation. But my covenant I will maintain with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you by this time next year.
When he had finished speaking with him, God departed from Abraham. Then Abraham took his son Ishmael and all his slaves, whether born in his house or acquired with his money, every male among the members of Abraham's household, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins on that same day, as God had told him to do. Abraham was 99 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised, and his son Ishmael was 13 years old when the flesh of his foreskin was circumcised. Thus on that same day Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised, and all the male members of his household, including the slaves born in his house or acquired with his money from foreigners, were circumcised with him. Chapter 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham by the terebinth of Mamre as he sat in the entrance of his tent, while the day was growing hot. Looking up, he saw 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran from the entrance of his tent to greet them. And bowing his head to the ground, he said, Sir, if I may ask you this favor, please do not go on past your servant. Let some water be brought that you may bathe your feet, then rest yourselves under the tree. Now that you have come this close to your servant, let me bring you a little food, that you may refresh yourselves, and afterward you may go on your way. Very well, they replied. Do as you have said. Abraham hastened into the tent and told Sarah, Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make rolls. He ran to the herd, picked out a tender, choice steer, and gave it to a servant, who quickly prepared it. Then he got some curds and milk, as well as the steer that had been prepared, and set these before them, and he waited on them under the tree while they ate. Where is your wife Sarah? They asked him. There in the tent, he replied. One of them said,
I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah will then have a son.
Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, just behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, advanced in years, and Sarah had stopped having her womanly periods. So Sarah laughed to herself and said, Now that I am so withered and my husband is so old, am I still to have sexual pleasure? But the Lord said to Abraham,
Why did Sarah laugh and say, Shall I really bear a child, old as I am? Is anything too marvelous for the Lord to do? At the appointed time, about this time next year, I will return to you, and Sarah will have a son.
Because she was afraid, Sarah dissembled, saying, I didn't laugh, but he said,
Yes, you did.
The men set out from there and looked down towards Sodom. Abraham was walking with them, to see them on their way. The Lord reflected,
Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do, now that he is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to find blessing in him? Indeed, I have singled him out, that he may direct his sons and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just, so that the Lord may carry into effect for Abraham the promises he made about him.
Then the Lord said,
The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grave, that I must go down and see whether or not their actions fully correspond to the cry against them that comes to me. I mean to find out."
While the two men walked on further towards Sodom, the Lord remained standing before Abraham. Then Abraham drew near to him and said, "Will you sweep away the innocent with the guilty? Suppose there were 50 innocent people in the city. Would you wipe out the place rather than spare it for the sake of the 50 innocent people within it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to make the innocent die with the guilty, so that the innocent and guilty would be treated alike. Should not the judge of all the world act with justice?" The Lord replied,
"If I find 50 innocent people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake."
Abraham spoke up again, "See how I am presuming to speak to my Lord, though I am but dust and ashes. What if there are 5 less than 50 innocent people? Will you destroy the whole city because of those 5?
"I will not destroy it,"
he answered,
"if I find 45 there."
But Abraham persisted, saying, "What if only 40 are found there?" He replied,
"I will forbear doing it for the sake of the 40.
Then he said, "Let not my Lord grow impatient if I go on. What if only 30 are found there?" He replied,
"I will forbear doing it if I find but 30 there."
Still he went on, "Since I have thus dared to speak to my Lord, what if there are no more than 20?
"I will not destroy it,"
he answered,
"for the sake of the 20.
But he still persisted, "Please, let not my Lord grow angry if I speak up this last time. What if there are at least 10 there?"
"For the sake of those 10,
he replied.
I will not destroy it."
Then the Lord departed as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned home. Chapter 19. The 2 angels reached Sodom in the evening, as Lot was sitting at the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he got up to greet them, and bowing down with his face to the ground, he said, "Please, gentlemen, come aside into your servant's house for the night, and bathe your feet. You can get up early to continue your journey." But they replied,
"No, we shall pass the night in the town square."
He urged them so strongly, however, that they turned aside to his place and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking cakes without leaven, and they dined. Before they went to bed, all the townsmen of Sodom, both young and old, all the people to the last man, closed in on the house. They called to Lot and said to him,
"Where are the men who came to your house tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may have intimacies with them."
Lot went out to meet them at the entrance. When he had shut the door behind him, he said, "I beg you, my brothers, not to do this wicked thing. I have 2 daughters who have never had intercourse with men. Let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you please. But don't do anything to these men, for you know they have come under the shelter of my roof." They replied, "Stand back. This fellow," they sneered, "came here as an immigrant. Now he dares to give orders. We'll treat you worse than them." With that, they pressed hard against Lot, moving in closer to break down the door, but his guests put out their hands, pulled Lot inside with them, and closed the door. At the same time, they struck the men at the entrance of the house, one and all, with such a blinding light that they were utterly unable to reach the doorway. Then the angels said to Lot,
"Who else belongs to you here? Your sons-in-law and your daughters, and all who belong to you in the city. Take them away from it. We are about to destroy this place, for the outcry reaching the Lord against those in the city is so great that he has sent us to destroy it."
So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, who had contracted marriage with his daughters. "Get up and leave this place," he told them. "The Lord is about to destroy the city." But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. As dawn was breaking, the angels urged Lot on, saying,
"On your way, take with you your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the punishment of the city."
When he hesitated, the men, by the Lord's mercy, seized his hand and the hands of his wife and his 2 daughters and led them to safety outside the city. As soon as they had been brought outside, he was told,
"Flee for your life. Don't look back or stop anywhere on the plain. Get off to the hills hills at once, or you will be swept away."
"Oh no, my lord," replied Lot. "You have already thought enough of your servant to do me the great kindness of intervening to save my life, but I cannot flee to the hills to keep the disaster from overtaking me, and so I shall die. Look, this town ahead is near enough to escape to. It's only a small place. Let me flee there. It's a small place, isn't it, that my life may be saved?"
"Well then," he replied, "I will also grant you the favor you now ask. I will not overthrow the town you speak of. Hurry, escape there. I cannot do anything until you arrive there."
That is why the town is called Zor. The sun was just rising over the earth as Lot arrived in Zor. At the same time, the Lord rained down sulphurous fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. He overthrew those cities and the whole plain, together with the inhabitants of the cities, and the produce of the soil, but Lot's wife looked back, and she was turned into a pillar of salt. Early the next morning, Abraham went to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. As he looked down towards Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole region of the plain, he saw dense smoke over the land rising like fumes from a furnace. Thus it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he was mindful of Abraham by sending Lot away from the upheaval by which God overthrew the cities where Lot had been living. Since Lot was afraid to stay in Zor, he and his 2 daughters went up from Zor and settled in the hill country, where he lived with his 2 daughters in a cave. The older one said to the younger, "Our father is getting old, and there is not a man on earth to unite with us, as was the custom everywhere. Come, let us ply our father with wine, and then lie with him, so that we may have offspring by our father." So that night they plied their father with wine, and the older one went in and lay with her father, but he was not aware of her lying down or her getting up. The next day the older one said to the younger, "Last night it was I who lay with my father. Let us ply him with wine again tonight, and then you go in and lie with him, that we may both have offspring by our father." So that night, too, they plied their father with wine, and then the younger one went in and lay with him, but again he was not aware of her lying down or her getting up. Thus both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older one gave birth to a son, whom she named Moab, saying, "From my father. He is the ancestor of the Moabites of today." The younger one too gave birth to a son, whom she named Ammon, saying, "The son of my kin. He is the ancestor of the Ammonites of today." Chapter 20. Abraham journeyed on to the region of Negeb, where he settled between Kadesh and Shur. While he stayed in Gerar, he said of his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." So Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him,
"You are about to die because of the woman you have taken, for she has a husband."
Abimelech, who had not approached her, said, "O Lord, would you slay a man even though he is innocent? He himself told me, 'She is my sister,' and she herself also stated, 'He is my brother.' I did it in good faith and with clean hands." God answered him in the dream,
"Yes, I know you did it in good faith. In fact, it is I who kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Therefore, return the man's wife. As a spokesman, he will intercede for you, that your life may be saved. If you do not return her, you can be sure that you and all who are yours will certainly die."
Early the next morning, Abimelech called all his court officials and informed them of everything that had happened, and the men were horrified. Then Abimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, "How could you do this to us? What wrong did I do to you that you should have brought such a monstrous guilt on me and my kingdom? You have treated me in an intolerable way. What were you afraid of," he asked him, "that you should have done such a thing?" "I was afraid," answered Abraham, "because I thought there would surely be no fear of God in this place, and so they would kill me on account of my wife. Besides, she is in truth my sister, but only my father's daughter, not my mother's, and so she became my wife. When God sent me wandering from my father's house, I asked her, 'Would you do me this favor? In whatever place we come to, say that I am your brother.' Then Abimelech took flocks and herds and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham, after he had restored his wife Sarah to him. He said, Here, my land lies at your disposal. Settle wherever you please. To Sarah he said, See, I have given your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. Let that serve you as vindication before all who are with you. Your honor has been preserved with everyone. Abraham then interceded with God, and God restored health to Abimelech, that is, to his wife and his maidservants, so that they could bear children. For God had tightly closed every womb in Abimelech's household on account of Abraham's wife, Sarah.